Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. South Africa's National Union of Mineworkers has resolved to take up the cudgels against Anglo American on behalf of silicosis sufferers. Mining Weekly editor Martin Creamer is in the studio to tell us more. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks, Shannon.
Can you tell us a bit more about silicosis? What are the risks, who gets it the most, and what can you do to prevent it?
Yeah, it's a lung disease, and you get it from working in mines where there's a lot of dust, and that silico dust gets into the lungs and causes lesions. And ptysis is another name that we used to hear a lot about. People used to suffer from ptysis, particularly Cornish miners coming out in the late 1800s and working on the gold mines here, on these hard rock mines. You know, they used to die like flies, because I think ptysis is even a complicated version of silicosis, where there's also infection of the lungs, etc. And my late father used to work on the Randfontein Estates, used to give us these horrific stories about people dying very young, coming out here from Cornwall and then suffering from ptysis and dying. And so that's how our mines have been built. It's been built on a lot of corpses, unfortunately, because they never used to prevent the conditions in underground from causing this ptysis. So a lot of people died. Now we hear of silicosis. Similar situation, these miners who are taking Anglo American to court are former gold miners, from the Free State, suffering from silicosis, wanting compensation now. Anglo American, of course, doesn't mine gold anymore. They've still got hard rock mining with the platinum where this could occur, but that isn't affected in this particular case. The Anglo Gold 18 involved people from the old President Steyn mine and others. So we have Anglo saying now, look, we caught in the middle of this. We will, while this case litigation is being built up, we're prepared to pay, healthcare costs for these people as a sort of a humanitarian gesture. Not that they're admitting any liability, but they're saying, well, there is going to be a trial. We don't know what the outcome of the trial is going to be. Perhaps we could then, pay for these healthcare costs until a conclusion is reached.
Now, speaking of that, you've mentioned that they'll pay until the court case is completed. What happens to them afterwards?
I'm sure that the courts are going to decide on what award they will have. And, the mood of the world at this point in time is that individuals are actually getting the upper hand, against corporations and workers backed by, lawyers who can really put the case strongly or stand to gain compensation, which might be considerable, coming forward. So perhaps at last there will be proper compensation. You wonder what they can do about all those who have died in the meantime, and surely the best answer would be to improve the conditions on the mine, make sure that people don't get this sort of disease. And obviously they have improved over the years. We're looking at a bit of a legacy issue here. But I think the mines have got sufficient funds to compensate these people. But of course, there could be large numbers. There are tens of thousands of people who are suffering from silicosis in South Africa. And if they all come forward and claim, it could amount to a sizable sum, which Anglo American will have to face along with their shareholders.
Now, the NUM has also threatened to strike if accidents underground don't cease. What do you think that effect will be on production in South Africa?
Well, they're actually saying that the fatalities rose by 27%. There was an additional fatality rate that rose by 27% to, I think, 50 people in the first quarter of this year. And that's what's disturbing them, because there was a turnaround. The trend was downward, and now all of a sudden it is reversing. And I think this is the main concern. Why is it reversing? So, this Saturday they'll be starting with provincial protests. Their first one will be in Rustenburg on May the 7th on Saturday. And then each province will take a turn in actually staging a protest. Then between September and October they will choose a day where it'll be a total stay away. So again, you can see that production is badly affected when these strikes take place. And either September or October there's going to be a stay away. It sounds like a single day, which is quite bad, but of course prolonged strikes are far worse. But what the message coming out of the National Union of Mineworkers is that, the silicosis deaths, this respiratory death problem, is even worse than the fatalities through mine accidents. So they are setting up quite a crusading attitude around the silicosis issue. And although they're very firm on fatalities in mines and always have been, and they're upset because the trend is being reversed, I think that the silicosis battle is also going to hot up.
What else is the National Union of Mineworkers unhappy about in the general mining industry?
Yes, they've had their National Executive Committee pronounce and resolve on many, many issues. One of them was this issue that they would back all those claimants against Anglo American Corporation. That was an important one. And also that they would take special action against all the fatalities and the change in the trend of fatalities. But they also picked on quite a few companies. One of them was Palabora Mining Company, where they said that the particular black economic empowerment deal, which involved an employee share ownership plan, they weren't happy with that because they said that it was only affecting copper, and there are other metals mined by Palabora, including vermiculite, and they believe that it should involve all the metals and minerals mined and not just the copper. So they want to have a relook at that, and also the issue of some mines not being policed was worrying them, because they were saying that you find that they named a mine in the Mpumalanga area, coal mine, isn't a prominent mine, but they were saying because of the lack of enforcement, these people have been mining without a license. If there had been enforcement, those 300 workers possibly could have their jobs now, but now because they've got to close the mine, 300 people lose their jobs. So they're saying we want enforcement, we want more inspectors going out there, so that once people are employed, they stay employed, that you don't then have the inspectors going out late and saying, hey, you haven't got a mining license, so they close you down. So it'd be better for them to be in there early so that once these people are employed, they could remain employed. And then, of course, the old ArcelorMittal situation with Kumba and also the Imperial Crown Trading. They're very unhappy about that because, they say that the state had an option to create cheaper steel, and they want them to do that now. They want them to exercise their right over 21.4% of Sishen iron ore, and to use that ore to introduce a lower price steel into the South African market, which they feel will create more jobs, etc. So, and they also want to fight on behalf of other sectors, like they want to go outside of the mining sector, and when it comes to fatalities in the construction sector and also energy sector, they want to stand behind those sectors as well. So we can see that the unions are starting to lock arms on the issue of fatality, health and safety, disease, and Anglo American, the initial target here by people suing them because they're suffering from silicosis.
Well, let's hope they get what they deserve. Thank you very much, Martin.
A pleasure, Shannon.
That's the show for today. Join us again next time for more news and insight into what's happening in the mining world.
For 30 years, Creamer Media's Engineering News has delivered unmatched insight into South Africa's real economy. Subscribe now and go to engineeringnews.co.za for the real economy in real time. Engineering News, not just for engineers.